Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughn, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can join the movement at togetherindigital.com. And today, I'm so excited to have you all here with us today because we are in for an insightful hour exploring how to source your power from within. And we are thrilled to have with us Jay Jetty certified. I didn't say that right, did I?
It's all right. It's all right. That's the beauty of live. You can wind it back and run it again. Jay Shetty. Yes.
Jay Shetty certified coach and my friend Tian Philson, who will guide us on the journey to authentic growth and help us to unlock our true selves and authentic selves, right? Our imperfect selves, and embrace
All
that.
of it.
All
Embrace
of
it all. Embrace the messy. Embrace the messy. Yes.
So that whether you're seeking more purpose, fulfillment, or professional or personal development, this is a Power Lounge session that is for you. And I know, again, many of us in this space, as ambitious and digitally savvy as we all are, we love talking about these sorts of topics. We are going to explore some key takeaways, such as understanding that your power comes from within. As Tian just reminded us, embracing the messy journey of growth and recognizing the internet connection between authenticity and empowerment. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Tian. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. That was lovely. It's like you do this all the time or something.
Yeah, I
That
had a
was so
little
lovely.
practice. Thanks. Practice makes perfect, and
Yeah.
even then it's not perfect, but
That's
that's
it. Perfect
okay.
or progress, whatever you're aiming for. I am really actually trying hard to avoid perfect these
Oh,
days.
yeah.
So, but I like
Same.
practice. I like the practice
I
part.
like the practice too.
Hmm.
I don't even know
Yeah.
what perfect is anyway, so it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. You and I have got to spend some time in person, and I really, really
Hmm.
love your energy and I love
Same.
your passion. And so the chance to come on here and just spend this time
Yeah.
together. This is my first time recording where there's like audience listening in this
Uh-huh.
way,
Yep.
aside from like your typical Instagram lives or
Yeah.
your Facebook lives, things like that. So I'm excited for this part of it. This is new. I
Me
like it.
too. Me too.
Yeah.
Anymore, it feels odd when I don't have a live listening audience and things just
Yeah.
get recorded and kind of canned and edited for later. So I'm used to being
Uh-huh.
unedited and
There you
unfiltered.
go.
So yes, we do have a live listening audience with us today. Folks, don't be shy. Drop questions, comments into the chat if you have them. If you are a regular listener of our recorded podcast, check out our website and
Mhm.
always, take the time if you want to listen in live. We record every Friday, typically at noon Eastern. It's a great time to be a part of the conversation. And we want to be talking with you, not at you.
Mm,
So, Tian, let's give everybody the chance to get to know you better. That's exactly why I wanted to have you here because
sure.
that appreciation for the energy, the passion, and what you bring to the table is much the same. It's very mutual. So you spent 20 years in corporate
Uh-huh.
and in sales before you became a coach. And
Yes.
I know it probably wasn't any one pivotal moment, but was there a pivotal moment or pivotal moments that made you
Yeah.
realize that it was time for a change? What was that like?
Yeah. I love the question because it's really, really awesome to go back and reflect on this. You
Hmm.
hit it on the head. Like, right, there's not just one moment. I think there are moments that lead you to take steps, little steps toward something that feels a bit more aligned, a bit more like a better fit. So I could probably run back like 10, 20 of those moments if I went piece by piece. But if I really think about those last few months that were leading up to the shift and the change, there's two in particular that come to mind.
Hmm.
And one of those, and so to take you back to, let me get this right, May, no, no, yeah, it was May, it wasn't 22, it was May of 2021. And at the time, I was at 8451, which is an organization that I still love very much to this day.
Hmm.
And they have this great process in the sales journey or the sales support process where you have like five conversations, like five very deliberate career conversations with your manager. And, one's the mid year, one's the end of year, and there's a few check ins. So this was the May check in. And I just remember not setting up the time because it's the employee that's supposed to set up the time with their people
Okay.
leader. And I just remember I didn't set I would not I knew I needed to set up the time and I wouldn't set up the time. I'm like, "What is that about?"
Mm,
This is kind of far enough in my journey that I'm learning to listen and tune in and check in and be like, "What is going on here?" So my manager takes the initiative and he sets the time up with me so that, we could have our conversation, and I came into the conversation and I had nothing.
mm,
I had nothing to contribute in terms of, here's what I'm looking for next. I mean, we'd had various conversations prior to that about the types of roles, the types of work that I was hoping to do, and some things that I loved about the current position, but some things that I was really ready to move on from. And so the fact that, like, for the first time in my career, like, I couldn't even bring anything to the table to be like, well, let's try this.
mm.
That was a really big indicator.
Yeah.
The other part of it is the morning before that meeting, I was trying to, like, I was grappling with this fact that this person who's always on top of her stuff has nothing to bring to this conversation. And I was
Yeah.
asking myself, why? And I started, like, drawing out. I don't know if you are familiar with Chitzen. I'm probably saying his name wrong. Csikszentmihalyi. He's got this flow state theory, right? And
Okay.
it has to do with when your level of challenge relative to your level of skill, or perceived
Hmm.
level of skill relative to perceived level of challenge, when it's in the optimal place where you're challenged just enough to grow,
Hmm.
but, like, if you're under challenged, you're bored, and if you're over challenged, it creates stress and anxiety. But there's this really beautiful, optimal space for growth. And I was really trying to, like, I was thinking about explaining this to my manager, and I stopped myself and I was like, this is not the place for that conversation. Like, this is not,
Hmm.
I don't know, it just did not feel like a good fit. But what did become very apparent to me is I cared a lot about that idea. I cared a lot about
Hmm.
those theories and those principles of motivation. And I cared a lot about, like, what drives other people to do what they do and how do we optimize it.
Yeah.
And it's like this light bulb went off and I started scribbling on my notepad. And basically I was designing this idea of a role that looked like a coach, but I didn't know what to call it.
Yeah.
So that's where it began. I was May of 21. By the fall of 21, I was enrolled in a coaching certification course. I was still doing my job every day and I was still
Hmm.
bringing my all,
Hmm.
but I was enrolling in this course because I was like, I got to do something with this, like, intention and this energy.
Yeah.
And then by March of the following year, March of 22, the other pivotal moment was me in a meditation. I had
Hmm.
been meditating about abundance. I had been meditating, asking for clarity. And it was about 3 months before my birthday. And I
Uh-huh.
just got this whisper in me
Hmm.
that was like, what if you either found a new position
Hmm.
or took the leap altogether? And it
Wow.
was like this very subtle whisper. And I was like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, are we really doing this? And those are the two big moments more towards, like, kind of the end of the journey that really
Mm.
led me to where I am now.
And that's really interesting because I think I've talked to a lot of women, obviously throughout the course of this podcast, and
Mhm.
I think many times we feel like it has to be some big pivotal
Yeah,
moment, some
yeah,
massive tragedy or firing or,
yeah,
signs, massive sign from the universe that tells us now is the
yeah,
time. This is the instance in which you have to do this. And it
yeah.
sounds like for you, it was this sense of almost numbness, I would say.
Numbness, but also I really think that when our intuition is trying to guide us, it's
Hmm.
more of a whisper, but it's a very clear
Exactly.
whisper,
Subtle. Hmm.
right? It's subtle, but it's clear.
Clear. Hmm.
And I'm really I will wholeheartedly say I feel like I still have lots of wonderful work to do on this journey of, like,
Hmm.
really tapping into my intuition.
Yeah.
But that is something that is being proved to me time and time and time again. Is like,
Right.
when it's clear,
Hmm.
it's not like this messy, like, cymbals banging. It's this subtle whisper
Right.
of your heart, your mind, your gut.
And you had to slow down for that, right? I can imagine
Absolutely.
working in sales and at a company as large as 8451, which if you're not
Yeah.
local to Cincinnati, they are a big data and insights company that does a lot in service with Kroger's.
Yeah.
And so, it's not a hugely competitive space, but it's high, it's,
It's
pretty
busy, it's
fast
demanding, it's
paced. It's
challenging, and
right.
in all the best of ways. Yes.
So what was it that kind of got you to start? Were you always reflective and meditative, or was
Mm.
that something that you had to kind of grow into?
I definitely had to grow into it. I
Okay.
mean, even now, like, I have my moments. This
Mhm.
morning was like kind of a chaos kind of moment where I found myself just a little bit all over the place, but
Mhm.
now I can feel it.
Yeah.
Now I can feel it in my body and be like, hey, hey,
Mhm.
girl, slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down, it's okay. But I've actually more so been the kind that's like running a little too fast and
Hmm.
tripping over her own shoes and whatever. That's
Hmm.
kind of my default if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
It was an accidental discovery of yoga,
Hmm.
which first brought me into this space. I was doing circuit training,
Uh-huh.
and the wind down or the slow down from the circuit training was a P90, like the last tail end of the video, and they interspersed, if that's
Hmm.
the word, this yoga sequence in there. I guess it's not interspersed. They brought it in,
Yeah.
whatever. This yoga sequence, and I just loved the way it felt to like stretch
Oh, yeah.
and move my body. And I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, this thing right here feels
Right?
good. It feels good." But even in the beginning, it was like hot, hard, and sweaty.
Uh-huh.
It felt good, but I
Yeah.
was not yet in the place to slow my mind down and really
Hmm.
tune into my heart. And so that took some time,
Yeah.
like over the course of months and years. And
Hmm.
then I really started to embrace like the inner transformation of
Yeah.
it into what it is today.
I think it's one of those things I've learned too over time as I've gotten older. It's like we are taught and told as women we are meant to look a certain way, feel a
Mm,
certain way, be a certain way, and we're not
mm.
meant to want or desire. And so often, like I found, I was really lucky. I found yoga, I think, when I was in like my teens. I was 18
Oh, nice.
when I
Yeah.
started, and ever since then, and even as I've gotten older, I've definitely have always chosen movement that feels
Hmm.
good for both my body and my mind. And it's not that I
Okay.
don't want a challenge, but I also don't want to put my body under distress for the
Sure.
sake of making others more comfortable with how that I look,
Mm,
right?
gotcha.
And so I have found things like Yin Yoga to be extremely
Yeah.
wonderful. And that's a longer, like more floor supported yoga. And I know it's usually a
Hmm.
bunch of 80 something year olds doing it. I don't
Yeah.
give a damn. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, I can go out and I can do more high impact, high energy
Uh,
exercises and not get injured because my tendons and my ligaments are that much stronger because of the deep tissue
ooh.
that I'm getting at by doing longer stretches and more yin yoga, and it's one of those
Yeah.
things just serving, if it serves your mind and your body and you get joy out of it, why do we deny ourselves? It's like we
Right.
just so often don't put our energy towards the things that bring us joy. But I think that's
Yeah.
something as I get older that I'm starting to pay more attention to. And I think that includes in the type of, not just movement and exercise, but the kind of work that you're doing. And so I love
Sure.
that you did that. You saw that spark and you thought, why am I so inclined to take my work review and turn it into a coaching session for myself?
That is
I
such a good
love
point.
that.
Yeah.
You actually in that moment were coaching yourself and you took note of that. You got curious and started to pull it apart.
Yeah.
And now here
I
you
never
are.
thought about it that way. That's so insightful of you.
Yeah, you totally
Yeah,
did that. And you
seriously.
did it in the moment and then you took note of it. And I think, it's hard for us to see our own gifts, I think,
Mm.
oftentimes
Hmm.
because they come so naturally to us. It's second nature. We don't see it.
Say that
Right?
again. Seriously, that is so real. Like it is so
Hmm.
real. They're hidden to us or blind to us because it feels so easy.
Hmm.
And we almost dismiss it. And it takes either slowing down, like
Yeah.
you said, or being open to the feedback of those that we trust, right? That have
Yeah.
some credibility, which I think is an important
Yeah.
aspect of that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I love that
yeah,
you saw
good
that in
point.
yourself. I love that you saw that in yourself. So now that you are coaching and
Hmm.
looking back at your experience in sales and consulting, how has it informed how you coach and how you approach wellness?
It's actually really, really cool. And to
Hmm.
be honest, so now I'm into like I've now completed 2 full years, right, as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur and doing this work full time. I think it was always there when I was doing the yoga. So the yoga was something I did alongside my corporate career for like
Hmm.
5 years before I did all of this full time. But now that I'm out of the sales career, I can look back and I can see just how integrated
Hmm.
it all is. I think that the key word is connection.
Hmm.
And I think that it's connection in two particular ways. I think in one way, it's a connection to the experiences
Yeah.
of what others that I think I'm really well positioned to help support.
Yes.
It's a connection to what they might be experiencing or going through and how this can help serve them.
Hmm.
And then I think the other part is it's a connection to my approach,
Hmm.
essentially. And so when you're in sales, the one thing that kept me going for so long was a genuine interest in the needs of
Yep.
others. And so, like, how can you solve that gap, or how can you solve what's missing? And that's really at the heart of sales. You are providing a solution
Mm-hmm.
to some sort of a challenge or problem. Now, sometimes you're creating, or identifying a need for something because, hey, there is value. It's like the iPhone. I don't think anybody was going, I wish I had this smarter thing in my hand,
Yeah.
right? But it did actually solve some issues. But anyway, my point is the approach of sales
Mm-hmm.
helps me approach coaching in very similar ways of like
Yep.
really being deeply invested in like what are the needs that
Mm-hmm.
are missing and how can I solve a challenge.
Yep.
So
I
that's
love it.
probably like the big two.
Ladies, what she's talking about right there are transferable skills. I
Ah,
cannot
yes.
tell you how many women I speak to that say, I don't have X,
Mm,
Y, Z. I'm
yes.
out there looking for a job in sales, but
Hmm.
I don't have X, Y,
Yes.
Z.
Yes.
And you could flip it and say, I've been coaching for 20 years, but I don't
Yes.
have the skills to do sales. Guess what? Tyann, you just proved them wrong. They
That is,
do.
yeah, I love it. And you know what? It's so fun because, like, when I'm working with my clients,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about various topics and things that they're interested in. But oftentimes I'll hear some of those same themes of,
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I'd like to consider this, but I don't have that. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I'm bringing it back to, well, what do you have? And I'm really
Yeah.
looking for evidence, and I'm looking for them to share with me and themselves out loud, like
Yep.
the evidence. And a lot of times they'll actually start to think about it and go, well, actually,
Yep.
now that we're talking about it, I
Uh-huh.
do know this and I do know this and I have done this. And
Yeah.
I'm just sitting back and I'm going, huh,
How about that?
listen, yeah. So, yeah, yeah, that's common though. I think,
Mm-hmm.
again, either something comes so easy that you
Yes.
miss it,
Hidden gifts.
hidden gifts, or you don't always give yourself the credit
Mm-hmm.
for the ways that it's come about
Yeah.
in a very similar or transferable way.
Mm-hmm. And I
Yeah.
think, again, it just kind of comes to that, just, I don't know why women get that rap or give themselves that rap that they are not good at sales. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you just said it. You understand and meet the needs of others.
Yeah.
Hello, how have we been conditioned?
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? I think it's because, unfortunately, and it's weird. I mean, now that I've taken a step away from the traditional and corporate side of sales, I have,
Mm-hmm.
again, a new appreciation for it. But I
Yeah.
think when you're in it, or when you feel like you have to step into it,
Yeah.
it feels kind of like dirty, if you
Uh-huh.
will, or like
Uh-huh.
undesirable. And
Yep.
it's this negative connotation of like random slimy car salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what you associate with sales because it
Yep.
has a negative connotation. But if you
Mm-hmm.
really step back and say, well, actually, how am I here to serve,
Yep.
which is something that, thank goodness, in our coaching school we
Mm-hmm.
really spent some time kind of like going deeper into, is sales when done with heart is actually about service.
Absolutely.
And so I think a lot of times we lean into the negative connotation of sales instead of
Mm-hmm.
taking a step back and going, actually, there's something really beautiful and
Yeah.
really supportive in this opportunity. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where it gets lost,
I agree.
particularly maybe more for women. I mean, a lot of studies and results say that
Yeah.
women tend to be more adverse, but I hear it from
Yeah.
men too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel guilty for, you know, uh, talking about myself or
Mm-hmm.
talking about what I can
Promoting
offer.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, actually, but you're helping to solve a need for somebody else. I know I've been there
Yeah.
personally.
And
Yeah.
it is at that point where it's making the ask, right? It's
Yeah.
making the
Yeah.
ask. It's closing it's again,
Yes.
it's a terminology around it. It's closing the deal. So I think it's like
Yeah.
internal dialogue, internal roadblocks,
Yeah.
mindset. It's all of those
Yes.
things. So
Yes.
you're right. I think it's like once you start to change that sort of inner approach and how you see it and how you frame it in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
that it can really start to sort of change how you approach it and how you look at it.
Exactly.
But yeah, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff to unpack there, and it gives me lots of ideas. But we'll move on to the next question
Okay.
because we could go down that rabbit hole. Could you walk
Yeah.
us through a little bit about the journey
Mhm.
of founding love, strength, and fitness, your business, and then what
Yeah.
challenges that you faced in those early
Yeah.
days? Because we've got a lot
Yeah.
of entrepreneurs, and as I like to call them, those entrepreneur curious, whether they
Mm.
know it or not.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I'd say it was a slow evolution.
Mm,
I think it was a very slow evolution, first and foremost, because I didn't set out to do this work full time.
Mhm.
In fact, I'm excited for when my husband gets to listen to this, if he's not listening already. We had a whole argument
Mhm.
about, like, he's like, you love this thing called yoga, and you think about, you want to get your certification, like that can be a whole business for you. And I'm like, skirt, like hit the brakes, slow down. I have no interest. I don't want to do this as my
Aw.
career. And I think there was a point at which, in that, it wasn't a real argument, but it was a heated debate. And
Sure.
I was like, um, I don't have a desire to be an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And so when I first founded Love, Strength, and Fitness, even then I was kind of like hesitant on the idea of it being anything more than something I did with passion
Yeah.
alongside my quote unquote safer,
Yeah.
more aligned corporate career. Um, and it's funny because, he really didn't push the issue. He did like share his perspective, but this little seed, I think, started to plant in me, and it helped me challenge my own beliefs and my own ideas. And so over time, the first step was, well, I am interested in getting a certification for yoga, whether it's to go deeper in my own practice or whether it's just to help others
Yeah.
find their own pathway inward, right, through yoga specifically. And so I said, okay, I'll at least get the yoga certification because that feels aligned. And then after I got the certification, I thought, I don't want to lose. I have this thing about not wanting to waste my time or effort. And after going through all that training,
Yeah. It's a
I was
lot.
really concerned, right? It's a lot. I was really concerned that if I didn't step out there and like engage with people publicly, that it would just be something that I did for fun and never put to use.
Mhm.
So then it was like, you're going to teach a public class. I
Yeah.
did it within 3 months of graduating because I knew otherwise I'd lose the nerve.
Mm.
I did that for, like I said, 5 years. But meanwhile, this whole time, I'm also on my own journey. So I'm going inward, I'm going inward, I'm going inward.
Mhm.
And over time, what I came to realize is yoga is amazing and I love teaching yoga, but I didn't feel like yoga was the entire answer. I
Yeah.
felt like if I'm going to work with people on my own terms, I need something more to offer beyond yoga. So you fast forward to that May conversation that I was not excited to have, and
Ah.
this light bulb that went off, and it was like, what if
Yeah.
coaching is that thing? And so by
Uh-huh.
the time I enrolled in the coaching certification course, I was pretty well clear
Yeah.
that this was going to be more than just something I did on the side. I just didn't know
Mhm.
exactly how and when, and what it was going to look like to bring it together. So
Mhm.
that was the early stages of it. It was very much like
Mhm.
slow progression, challenging my own ideas, listening,
Mhm.
listening to the fears that were coming up,
Yeah.
and listening to also some of the pain I was experiencing. I mean, it's the word pain, it can feel worse than what it is, but even just like the discomfort of the day to day, or
Yeah.
the misalignment of like, I really feel like I'm meant to be doing something different. Over
Mm.
time, the louder that voice gets,
Yep.
the more painful it got because I felt disconnected from my authentic self.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
let's just take a moment and acknowledge the fact that, our brain doesn't know the difference between physical and emotional pain,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And
I
I
was
don't
just listening to something that like really validated that
Mhm.
based on like science.
Yeah.
Like it really,
Mhm.
it handles it the same.
100%. It does not know
Yeah.
the difference. That, and I just, again, yeah, kudos to your partner. I think it's always a question I have to anyone who is looking to start a business and make a big
Hmm.
leap like that. And again,
Hmm.
you may not be in a relationship, but it's like, what kind of support system do you have?
Yeah.
Starting a
Yeah.
business is a big and scary and sometimes lonely endeavor. So
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
that's community, connections, family,
Yeah.
friends, a partner at home,
Yeah.
what does it look like? What kind of
Yeah.
support do you have? And I love that you had support
I
and
did.
encouragement to take
It
that
makes
leap.
me, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you
You're fine,
off,
honey.
but it makes me think of the exercise that you did with us
Hmm.
during supper club, right? When
Yeah.
you walked us through a networking exercise, and I actually really love the visual process of
Hmm.
drawing those circles
Yep.
and connecting the dots between the role that different
Hmm.
people in our lives play.
Yeah.
And so, to your point, maybe you do or don't have a partner, or maybe they do or don't get it.
Yeah.
That's beside the point. If you
Hmm.
really sit down and think about the different levels of support that you have in your life, from emotional support to technical,
Yep.
people that know something, to people that are willing to challenge you,
Yeah.
to those that are your inspiration,
Hmm.
right? Like you start to really draw that map out.
Hmm.
I think most of us have more support than we realize.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine too the part of going inward requires obviously looking at not just your strengths, but your weaknesses, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And acknowledging those weaknesses. And then you gotta outsource some of that stuff.
Heck yeah. 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 Which is, to me, the hardest part of entrepreneurship is
Oh,
learning how to
right.
outsource, I
Yep.
think.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I
Yeah.
forgot to mention it earlier, but yeah, 100%. We were talking about, the sales and the icky feeling we sometimes get surrounding
Yeah.
that. And as you were
Yeah.
describing it, I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way about networking as well, but we just don't realize how much of a benefit it
Yeah.
is to
Yeah.
it, and how empowering it
It is.
is to
It is.
others when we help become connectors and get ourselves connected.
Right.
It's
Right.
such an important thing to do. Like, you can't grow your business without sales. You can't grow your business without networking.
Absolutely.
And they're
And
not necessary evils. They're just absolutely essential, and they can actually be a way to thrive, and they can be
yeah.
joyful, and they can be fun.
Yeah. My number one kind of tip or recommendation around that, uh,
Mm-hmm.
networking specifically, is figure out a couple of your core values
Mm-hmm.
and then take the time to step back and see where your core values are actually being supported in
Yeah.
that networking process. Me
Mm-hmm.
personally, there's two. One, it's a love of learning that I have. I call it growth. And the
Uh-huh.
other one is connection,
Yeah.
right? And so when I get to network, I get to make new connections
Mm-hmm.
with others. I also get to connect, like, to your point, their strengths and skill sets with either those that I know exist within others. And so you
Mm-hmm.
can make that organic, natural connection there.
Yeah.
Or two, getting to make a connection. I lost my train of thought there,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever, I'll leave it. I'll come back to it
That's
if it
okay.
comes back to me. But like the other part of it is that growth, getting to learn something new about what
Mm-hmm.
somebody else does, what their journey was
Yeah.
like, or whatever. And so I think if you can lean into what your personal values are,
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
way for you to your point, embrace and fall in love with the idea of
Mm-hmm.
networking for you.
I agree. I think values
Yeah.
alignment was a big eye opener for me. I spent a lot of
Yeah.
time networking with different associations, and it kind of always was like, okay, yeah, I'm here, but it felt so transactional. And then
Mm.
again, I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't believe in it, but joining
Yeah.
Together Digital and then seeing that there was a mission and values beyond just meeting and
Yeah.
greeting and business card passing. It was
Yeah.
really about empowerment and knowledge sharing and connecting and building professional friendships, relationships beyond the
Exactly.
job. I was like, oh, wow, this feels so different.
It feels different.
So much more transformational than anything
Yeah.
else. And so that was where I was like, okay, this is where I would rather spend my time networking than just kind of going to some trade show floor. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? It just
Mhm.
doesn't, it
Mhm.
feels completely different. So yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that's a great values. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just curious. I want to ask you too, like, because I know networking is a topic that you have a lot of passion
Mm-hmm.
and heart for.
Yeah.
But would you say that when you're networking authentically, it's almost hard to pinpoint the benefits that you're going to get? And so, like, to your point, transactional networking, it's like, if I give you A, you'll give me B. But I
Mm-hmm.
think transformational networking, as I love your words, so I'm going to repeat
Yeah.
those
Yeah. Yeah.
words. Transformational networking, it's almost like there's a level of abundance or
Mm-hmm.
possibility
Yes.
that is unknown to you
Mm-hmm.
until you go through with it, and then you
Yes.
get to see like the outcome. Does that make the was yeah.
100%. And I love that you brought that clarity to light. Because yes, I'm not overly strategic when I approach people,
Yeah.
because I know that there is possibility and opportunity within everybody. So I'm not
Yes.
overly selective because I find that to be an antiquated approach to networking. And I also
Mm.
find it to be what feels icky to a lot of people because it
Mm.
feels like you're disqualifying people before you've given them a chance to meet them. And
Right.
so sometimes you might actually miss a pretty awesome opportunity by not giving
Yeah.
people your time and energy and attention. I also
Yes.
find it to be what perpetuates exclusivity, and a couple other things that I don't necessarily care for in the way of just perpetuating and limiting opportunities for women, for people of color, for people within a certain
Mhm.
socioeconomic status, which is
Mhm.
also something like I just, for the sake of inclusivity, I just don't find those things necessarily helpful in breaking
Yeah.
down barriers, which is why I'm usually not big fans of, communities that are only for people of a certain level in the workplace or,
Mm.
executives only kind of things, because I'm like, no, we need to let people in that are at all levels. They need access to those folks, so
Yeah.
that they may
Yeah.
receive the opportunity. And I don't care if you are an executive or somebody just starting out of college, I'm going to give you
Sure.
my calendar link so that we
Mhm.
can spend a half an hour talking to one another to find
Yeah.
out how we can help support one another, because they're both deserving of each other's time, you know?
You know what? It's such a beautiful, just kind of like perspective
Mhm.
that you share. And it actually does make me think about what you said too about like the hidden gifts and the hidden potential
Yeah.
within others. I think to
Mhm.
your point, there's all these like selective and exclusive approaches that people have to how
Yeah.
they engage with others. But
Mhm.
I don't care who you talk to.
Yeah.
I don't care their background,
Mhm.
their education
Yep.
level, where they come from, whatever. Everyone has something really powerful
Oh,
and
yeah.
really meaningful to offer. And if you slow down and take the time to listen
Mhm.
and genuinely be interested and genuinely be curious in their story,
Oh, yeah.
you will walk away um, shifted, impacted, changed in some positive way. And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter, to your point, the title
Yeah.
or, how many years of X, Y, and Z they had.
Yeah.
What
You'd be
matters
surprised.
is their authentic gifts. And sometimes,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, I could go on about that's a soapbox for me. So I'm
I
gonna,
know, right? Same, same. I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
All right. Let's see. The next question I had for you was, being both a certified Jay Shetty coach and yoga
Mhm.
instructor. How do you blend these seemingly very different disciplines
Yeah.
into your work? Because you were kind of going on about how, you did the yoga instructor, and
Uh-huh.
then you were at work and you were like, oh yeah, coaching. I think I want to pursue this. So how are
Yeah.
you kind of working those two things together now?
It's you know what? I'll tell you, it is still in evolution in terms
Mhm.
of like how they actually come together. But what I fundamentally believe, and one of the reasons why coaching felt so aligned for me,
Mhm.
is that in both cases, you are taking yourself on a journey inward.
Yeah.
In one case, you roll out a mat and you get on that mat and sure, you've got a guide you through the teacher, but it's really about the feedback that you're getting from yourself within.
Mhm.
And then coaching is really no different, except, you don't have to roll out a mat. We pull up a chair to each
Yeah.
other, or we hop on a phone or a Zoom or whatever the case may be, and you engage in a journey, a
Mhm.
conversation where you get to go inward
Yeah.
to source your own truth and your own answers. And so to me, they are actually very well linked and very complementary to one
Agreed.
another. What I'm trying to learn now as the steward of this beautiful work is I'm trying to learn, because right now I feel like the amazing humans that I engage with from a coaching perspective
Mhm.
kind of live just in my coaching bubble. And then the amazing humans that I engage with from a
Yeah.
yoga perspective pretty much live just within my yoga bubble. And I'm
Mhm.
really trying to understand where the points of overlap do exist. And
Mhm.
that's everything from my actual services to like literally I'm relaunching my website because they were two separate entities in the beginning. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's all of it. I do think that they very much complement, but you have to be intentional and deliberate about how and
Yeah.
when you bring them together.
Well, I guess we need to connect you to some of our Together Digital ladies, like
Yeah.
Danelle in Denver, who does some pretty awesome like websites, and Sarah, who does
Yeah.
some branding in Orlando. Yeah, if you don't have some
Yeah.
help there already, we've got some really amazing women who do some awesome work there in those spaces. Yeah, I could see that. I do think, for me, I think that whole mind body connection is, to
Mhm.
me, feels like an opportunity, because I think those of us who do live and work in the professional world
Sure.
spend
Sure.
all of our time up here. For those who are
Yes.
just
Good point.
listening and not seeing me right now, I'm pointing at my head.
Yep.
We spend all of our time in our minds and
Yes.
never like attached in our bodies.
Yes.
And, I know this because I spent, 14 years in the advertising world and was working as a creative director. And, I spent a lot of time working to numb, and
Mm.
just really, even though I discovered yoga at 18, I
Mhm.
went off to college, took a gap year and a half, and then went right back into it really aggressively, worked full time, went to school full time at night, and
Yeah.
just kind of left all that behind and forgot about it for a long time, and then
Yeah.
had to come back to it because I was in severe burnout
Mm.
and needed to be reminded. And I think it's just such a essential thing. And then I got to a point where I remember I used to block my calendar every afternoon. Instead of going to reach for the caffeine at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I started going and doing an afternoon yoga stretch and meditation in one of the little huddles
Okay.
every afternoon in my agency, so
Mm.
that I could just get that little bit of boost of energy back, because I would be so in between all of the socialization and the
Mhm.
conversations and the ideation, and my brain would just be spinning like a top, and it would be hard to get
Yeah.
it to really slow down. I knew I'm like so far into my head, I need to get back into my body.
Yeah.
I literally, you probably could have like stabbed me with a knife and I don't even know if I would have felt it because I was just
Yeah.
so in my head, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And
Yeah.
so it's just really making sure that you know how to get back into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I feel like, other times I can totally detach from, my body and then like, or be in my body so much that like getting my brain to just focus and be
Mm.
present and be attention. Sometimes it's like getting the
Yeah.
opposite is hard as well. So like kind of having that balance and being attuned to when you're too much in one or the other
Yeah. Yeah.
is definitely a thing. So I can really see how, yoga practices within and understanding mind body connection within an office space and understanding and regulating your nervous system while
Mm-hmm.
in an office environment is really essential for people.
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
it feels a little woo for some folks, but when we deal with the amount of stress we deal with, I also worked in healthcare, but
Yep.
understanding and knowing it, those types of things, I think can help people
Yeah.
tremendously from even just like a performance standpoint. I mean, we seem to care so much in this country about productivity.
Yeah.
You could speak volumes about how that could help productivity as well.
Sure. But you know what? I love how you painted a very vivid picture for me. I'm literally picturing you like getting this physical
Mm-hmm.
cue
Yeah.
that's like, you know what? It's time for me to implement something different. So like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you mentioned burnout.
Yeah.
But you said it's time for me to implement something different, and you took it upon yourself to create a space for you
Yeah.
to, shift from all that heavy head work into
Mm-hmm.
some body
Yeah.
integration, some somatic work.
Yeah.
So for those that, because like for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I see it, I can visualize it, I get it, I feel
Mm-hmm.
it. What were some of the feelings or sensations, or how did you
Mm-hmm.
know? How did you know so that you could make that connection?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like it feels like I've just stepped off of a carousel that's been
Mm,
just going too fast.
yep,
And I feel it's kind of like a dizzy feeling, but I haven't
yep,
been moving. I've literally been sitting still.
yep,
And so it's like I need to actually kind of either sit and be still or even
yep,
just kind of like go for a walk.
yep.
Because I love walking meditations
Me too.
actually.
Mhm.
Because it's like a movement, but then I'm not thinking. I once had a friend who used to go for runs with me. He asked me, "So what do you think about when you're running?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I actually don't, I'm not thinking about anything. It's one of the
Yeah.
few times where my brain actually stops is when I'm
Ah,
running."
yeah. Good for
So,
you because mine is calculating my miles per hour rate,
see?
which at least it's not thinking about like my to-do list, but
Right.
it's like it's almost like a distraction or like a welcome
Hmm.
distraction. But anyway, that's awesome that you can
Everyone's
purely
different
just
though. Some
yeah.
people get a lot of ideas while they're running. Some people do a
Yes.
lot of thinking while they're running to
Yes.
process.
Yep.
So, but then other people like me detach it like
Yes.
while they run. So, like, what I love to hike. And while I'm hiking, my mind will wander and I tend to daydream a lot while I'm hiking,
Mhm.
but I'm
Mhm.
not really like stressing or like thinking over things too much. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think really kind of knowing like how your body is feeling, what
Yep.
that sensation is,
Yeah.
gives me that cue that, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
Amy, it's time to get off the carousel
Yeah.
and find the thing that needs to be done. And I've shared this before too. We had, I think it was when I was with Dr. Aquina Boateng
Mm.
several episodes ago now. She's a clinical
Mhm.
psychologist as well. We talked about that balance of ambition and wellness. And I had
Mm.
shared something with her. I think it was on that episode where my therapist was like, take your hands and like place them on the top of your head. Like I could do this in a meeting. This is something I could do
Mhm.
so that even if I can't take that walk break or that meditation break,
Uh-huh.
putting my hands on top of my head kind of slows that spinning sensation down because the weight
Mm.
grounds my body and my seat
Wow.
a little bit more. And even
Yeah.
just doing it
I'm gonna
right
try
now
it.
as we're sitting here, it does. It helps me feel a little bit more safe, a little more grounded. And I could do it while I'm talking to people in the middle of a meeting. And it's kind of like it doesn't throw any weird signals body language wise, but it gives me that calming sensation. Isn't that wild?
I'm putting that in my pocket, honey.
Right?
Like seriously, I'm putting that in my pocket. Here's the other thing that I'm sensing from that, and
Mhm.
like you said, we might have moved into a part of the conversation that feels woo for some, but I really believe that there's something physiological.
Oh, yeah.
And the part of it that I'm connecting to is chakra energy. And so
Mhm.
this is your crown chakra right up here. And so when you put your hands up there, I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not going to try to get into the science of it in this moment, but what to me the grounding, I think, is absolutely real. I felt the weight of that, and I felt the weight of like myself settling into my seat.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think that when you're expending a lot of like mental churn
Yep.
energy, there is a physical kind of like over rotation sensation. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think this is my belief, and this is probably the reason why I also love inversions, right? When my head
Yes.
is planted on the floor, is I think that you're grounding your chakra energy.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, so I loved listening to you describe your sensations. It gave me like, it shined a light on some of mine as well.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree with the feeling of spinning. I used to tell my husband, I feel like I've been in a spin cycle of a washing machine. That's how I
Yes.
would describe it.
Mm-hmm.
There's that. The other indicator is when I sit down or lie down, but I can't be still.
Yeah.
I can't stop moving. Like I'm trying to be still and I physically and energetically can't stop moving.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is I tend to experience headaches, and the headaches feel
Yeah.
different than the typical headaches. They tend to be more like in my eyes or more toward the front of my head.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, just having that awareness of what are some of
Yes.
your physical
Yeah.
sensations and physical cues, I think is a really good way too. And so, if you are for days on end feeling this way, or like in the heat of a day, learning how to slow down and how to get into
Yes.
your body and how to do some of those very subtle things, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
I love to ground my feet. I'm actually, so I put my seat up a little bit higher, because my desk is tall. But I knew that if my seat was high, then my feet wouldn't touch the floor. So I put 2 yoga blocks
Yeah.
under my feet. So like I'm
Smart.
grounding my feet, but I really love your idea
Yeah.
and your recommendation of like grounding from the top of your head. And I think if
Mm-hmm.
we all had those little tips and tricks, it would at
Yes.
least help us slow down during the course of a day, and
Yeah.
perhaps get into the habit of doing it throughout the day, or like
Mm-hmm.
each week you've got something that you can lean into.
Yeah. We have to not acknowledge how overstimulated we are as a society now with the amount of information we have coming
So
at us now
I
compared
was thinking
to
about
past
that.
generations, for
I was
sure.
thinking about that for sure. And like,
Mm-hmm.
just thinking about today's conversation. So you're right. It's like it sends us into mental, emotional, and energetic overdrive. And I think
Always. Yeah.
finding ways to bring ourselves back to
Mm-hmm.
presence and body and mind body integration, I think
Yeah.
are critical.
On that note, like as people, because you mentioned the woundness, so that's probably one of
Hmm.
them. But are there any other misconceptions that you would say there are out there about sourcing power from within?
I mean, honestly, yeah, it's a great place to insert that thought, that question. I think the conception so often, I just think there's a lack of awareness of just how much of our power comes from within. I think
Mm,
that our body, our mind, head, heart, gut, I think it's sending us signals all the time. And I think because we're so overstimulated from everything that's coming at us, from
yeah.
everything we're absorbing externally, I think we miss the internal signals a
Yeah.
lot. I think we miss those whisperings that says, you said yes to that activity when you really meant no.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you said no out of fear, but really, if you challenged that fear, you'd actually want to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're constantly getting signals from ourselves, and it's just really hard with the influx of all this stuff that's coming at us to
Yeah.
slow down and tune into them. And that's where the practices come in. And to your point, doesn't matter if it's a walking practice. I love walking practices.
Yeah.
A stillness practice, a journaling practice, a climbing practice, yoga. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it can be anything, something that helps you integrate your mind and body and kind of rebalance, to your point, because sometimes you're heavy on one side and light
Yeah.
on the other. Yeah.
I love it. That's so
Yeah.
great. I love it. And again, there's no right or wrong. I think that's the other thing.
No.
People seem to think that there's one
Yeah.
anecdote, one right answer for that. And it's like, no, you just have to kind of play and try and
Yes.
do and
Yeah.
then figure it out, because we've talked about meditation and stillness and people are like, oh God, I can't sit still. I can't do that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's throw the can't out of there. And it's like, okay, try a walking meditation to start
Yeah.
and then build that into, at the end, I have found, oh my gosh, some of my best meditations have been after a long walk, when I've like,
Mhm.
my blood is flowing and things are
Mhm.
circulating and I'm
Mhm.
outside and I'm maybe like, I stopped in like a near like wooded area and I'm in the
Yeah.
trees and
Oh my
like
gosh,
there's
nature.
nature
Yes.
around
Yep.
and I'm like on the ground. It's just like those are some of my best,
Yeah.
meditation. So it's like play, try it. And
Play.
and don't, again, it's called a practice for a reason.
Mhm.
It's just because you're
Mhm.
just going at it and each session is going to be different than the other.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's never going to be the same. And it's never just going to be, oh, I've done it. I've accomplished the perfect meditation. I'm done. I never need to
Right.
do this again.
Right.
you
Right.
know?
All of that. Everything that you said. I mean, one, things are going to be different and resonate differently for different people, and I think it's so
Mhm.
important to honor that.
Mhm.
I think the best question that we can ask ourselves is like, what do I need right now?
Mm.
Or in what ways am I able to hear
Yeah.
the signals, the messages from
Mm.
myself, from my body, my head,
Yeah.
my heart, my gut? I think answering that gives us clues. And then the other piece to your point, I love the word play, is
Yeah.
play, because what I need on Monday is
Yeah.
probably not necessarily what I need on Tuesday or what I need in the morning versus
Mm.
the evening. And so having a whole toolkit is so important, and
Mhm.
exploring and re-exploring too.
Yeah.
um,
It's gonna
One
change.
interesting thing when it comes to yoga is, so there's 8 limbs of yoga, and within that there is the practice of the asana, and there's also the practice of the meditation. And in the 8 limbs of yoga, the asana, the yoga poses, actually comes before the meditation. And the reason why is because the movement of the body is
Mhm.
what helps prime
Yep.
the mind and the body to be ready for the stillness.
Mhm.
And so just to think about that as like there is a progression for a reason. And so for people that say, I can't sit still and meditate,
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, I agree. Like, I don't know that I would say can't, but I would ask, is that what you need right now? Perhaps what
Mhm.
you need is just something slower than the 100 miles per hour that you're running.
Right.
Like maybe you just need to slow it down from a run to a walk,
Mhm.
right? And then a walk to a stand, and a stand to a sit. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's progressive, and it's also different for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, it's okay to get messy.
Messy.
And on the note of getting messy, I think it's
Yeah.
always good to share
Yeah.
so that other people know it's okay. So I was wondering if you
Yeah.
could share a personal messy moment from your own journey where ultimately it led to some growth.
Yeah. Okay. So it's funny because messy has become such a something I hold so near and dear to my heart that
Yeah,
I don't know that I always pick out a messy moment. Like to
sure.
me, it's just life.
Yeah.
Like at this point, it's just life.
Uh-huh.
But one, I think that just yesterday, so this is still fresh in my mind, a beautifully messy moment. I had the honor of being the keynote speaker for Next Up Cincinnati yesterday.
Congrats.
And thank you. I had such a well organized plan down
Mm-hmm.
to like, what was going to fit into what time chunk and when we were going to do whatever, like interactive exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And right out the gate, the mic wouldn't work for me. Like, I don't know what I was doing, but every time I shifted it, it went out. And so
Yeah.
we tried with that for like 2 or 3 minutes and finally just ditched the mic. It was messy. My interactive activities were not cooperating the way that I thought they would. Like,
Mm-hmm.
inevitably things are never going to go exactly according to plan, and to me it wasn't a stressful messy, but it
Yeah.
was an acknowledgeable messy to be like, this is not going according to all the
Right.
pieces of things that I have on my sheet. But I was
Mm-hmm.
able to just really embrace that with a lot of self compassion.
Yeah.
And what happened at the end of that is people said, thank you so much for modeling what you
Yeah.
coach on. I heard that
Mm-hmm.
from several people. Thank you
Yep.
for modeling what you coach on, and that like this does not have to be perfect. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to like lose our shit and get stressed out about
Yeah.
it. Like we can embrace it, and
Mm-hmm.
also it gives others permission to show up with authenticity and be like, I am not the first person who couldn't figure out why the mic wouldn't work or couldn't get
Right.
their system to change the way it's supposed to. And so giving people permission to show up more authentically and messy, I think
Yes.
that's a really recent example. And I think the growth in that is me getting to ask myself, okay, so would you want to change anything about that? Or,
Mm-hmm.
like, would I change my technology? I mean, maybe tweaks, but not changes, right?
Yeah.
And then the other part is I think about my journey on as a yoga teacher. And in the beginning, I really wanted to make sure like everyone had a quality experience in the
Mm-hmm.
yoga session. And so that meant to me remembering the poses I had planned for them, getting the lefts and rights together. You know what I mean? Because when you're teaching yoga, I don't know if people understand just how many things are going on in your mind at the
Yeah.
same time. It's like supposed to be this very zenful practice, but also I'm watching like 12 different mats and trying to
Yeah.
keep everyone safe in their body alignment and trying to make sure like, hey, we move through a flow that makes sense for how our body wants to experience. Like some poses don't make sense to put before other poses because the body's not ready. So anyway, the point is I used to get really tangled up in like
Mm-hmm.
trying to make that really smooth for
Mm.
people. And when I learned to embrace the messy of it, I learned to laugh with it. I learned to have a lot of compassion for myself and also to just, again, model what I was hoping to bring to the mat, which is like, hey guys, we forgot an entire side of the body. We're going to rewind and we're going to do all of that now, just like life. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to go according to plan. And you can just like be really gentle with yourself and laugh about it. And like,
Yeah.
it's not that serious. It's just
It's
not.
not. It's not. This
Yeah.
is what I want you all to remember because I feel like I love this is the writer Amy coming out and it's
Yeah.
like that alliteration, right? Of the three M's. When you
Uh
let
huh.
things get messy and you let other people see it, you're modeling the behavior, right? You're allowing by
Yeah.
modeling
Yeah.
and you're making yourself memorable. How much more
Mm.
memorable was your talk from yesterday? How many more people are going to walk
Yeah.
away remembering you now because
Huh.
you allowed that to happen, right?
Yeah.
Would you have
Yeah.
gotten those same compliments and comments maybe from the talk if you hadn't had that messy moment and then modeled the behavior?
Yeah, my heart is like buzzing right now and it's saying you're spot
Yeah.
on. It's
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's saying right now. It's like you're
Yeah.
spot on.
Yeah.
Because like had I walked in there and everything had been perfect, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that they would have gotten the same demonstration.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I will say too, the mindset shift says, like, when I walked out of there, instead of feeling discouraged by
Yeah.
any of that, I was
Mm-hmm.
thankful to the universe to be
Yeah.
like, well, thanks for giving me real time,
Uh-huh.
opportunity to show that because I
Yep.
didn't have that in my plan.
Yep.
I did not have in my plan to like demonstrate what it feels like to keep calm under
Mm-hmm.
stress.
Yeah.
So the universe provided that for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I was grateful instead of, lamenting any part of it.
Yeah. Let it be
Yeah.
messy. Model
Let it
it.
be messy.
Make yourself memorable. Yep.
I
The
like
three
those.
M's.
Yeah, I like that.
Well,
Yeah.
and it reminds me too of that practice of non-attachment, right? Non-attachment to outcome, which is one of my favorites.
It's so hard,
Um,
but it's so good.
it really
Yeah.
is whenever, because if you are, like me, and I feel like we're similar in this way, Diane, of just like being somebody who likes to plan and,
Uh-huh.
host and provide experiences for people. And you have oftentimes a desired outcome. And
Yep.
this comes for a lot of us too, women that get put in the seat of being the host. You're planning parties,
Mhm.
vacations, things like that. And so you have this dream, this vision of the
Yeah.
day and how things will
Yeah.
go. And it's like oftentimes you don't get to be present and there for the
Mhm.
moment when you
Mhm.
are attached to the outcome. But if you
Mhm.
can learn to let that
Mhm.
go and just be there for the moment and be
Mhm.
present,
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever kind of comes your way, you can really respond and then receive
Yeah.
in such a
It's the
different way.
respond. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Respond and receive. I
Mm-hmm.
make a joke all the time now because my husband is actually really good at being present for the moment.
Yeah.
And his number one message, I feel like, or one of his superpowers is pivot.
Yeah.
And you can't pivot if you are holding on to the way and the outcome that you thought it was
Mm-hmm.
going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, respond and receive. I like that.
Yeah. Now that you've been coaching for a while, I would love to talk a little bit about how you've been able to help some of your clients evolve.
Yes.
Could you give us an example of a transformative moment when a client that you were able to witness a client when they have
Yeah.
been able to truly tap into their inner power?
So, yeah, the transformative moment, it happens over and over again. Literally, my clients start coaching themselves. That's what happens in our sessions. Like,
The coachee becomes the coach.
they literally,
That means you're doing a good job,
it
Diane.
means they're putting in the work too, right? Like,
Yep.
I give them
Yep.
so much credit because like I was with a client this week and we were having a time for reflection, and it's beautiful because it's often very organic. I don't always say, okay, this coaching session is going to be our reflective coaching session. No, I
Yeah.
come in and ask them like, what do they want to talk about today? And she started reflecting, and when she did, she started highlighting her key takeaways, and then she started asking herself like the next question. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's what I would typically do. Right,
Yeah.
but she did it, and I just sat back and was like, "Girl."
I love it.
Yeah, and it's like that's the moment. It's like, well, she's like, "Well, I came into you thinking about X and thinking I wanted Y." She's like, "But now after this time that we spent together, I've come to realize dot 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 dot." And then she's like, "Which makes me wonder." And it's like she literally guided herself through it, and it's beautiful
Ah,
because we are toward the end of our coaching,
yeah.
our formal coaching,
Mm-hmm.
agreement relationship together. And I'm just like sitting here in awe. And I told her, I was like, girl, I don't even know if you need me anymore. And she's like, no, no, now, not so fast, not yet, but
Right.
it's beautiful. That's what happens is they start to coach themselves. They start to see their own transformation and they tell me what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about me telling them what I see. It's about them telling me like how
Mm-hmm.
they've gotten from point A to B to C to D. And that's
Mm.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there one? I know it's so hard to pick out anyone, and we don't have to name names or anything,
Yeah.
but like, do you feel like there's been like a big, like, pivotal shift for anyone in particular, having gone from point A to point B that you were not expecting to see? A kind of like a big shift or pivot?
I can't say that I wasn't expecting to see. I believe in the magic of it. I really
Yeah.
do. And so I can't say I wasn't expecting to see it. I think that one in particular that's coming to mind for me is like she's someone I love dearly and I respect so much for like how
Hmm.
she approaches her craft and how she approaches her work.
Yeah.
And she always like comes ready, like ready
Hmm.
for the conversation, having done her own reflections and her own kind of like stepping back. And it's the magic that happens outside of the coaching session. And the
Yeah.
pivotal shift, I think, is when she came into a session and I mean, it's like her whole energy shifted from like
Mm.
asking me and being like, well,
Yeah.
what do you think about such and such to being
Uh,
like, well, here's how I'm solving these questions for myself. Like she just came, I mean, it's
ah.
the same thing in a way, but I'm thinking about a
Hmm.
very specific person. It's like, here's how I'm solving this for myself now. And
Hmm.
instead of her looking to me for the answers, she
Yeah.
said, I know I have the tools now.
Uh-huh.
She said, "I know I
Yeah.
have the tools now." And she's like,
Oh.
I see the thing that I was seeking before. It's here. It's already here. And I just need to keep doing the work."
Oh, I
And I
love
was like, ah, it makes me so happy, but it also
it.
makes me sad because it means that we won't
Right?
we won't be having like as regular of connections. But
Right.
it's so
So
beautiful.
bittersweet.
It
Yeah.
is. It is.
Well, and it's one of those things I've said to people so many times, like, don't outsource your knowing, don't outsource your knowing. But it is
Mhm.
such a hard thing,
Yeah.
to not do that, to not, just kind of seek affirmation and to
Yeah.
just, consult everyone in the world about every little thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
to pull the audience,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
at some point it's like you can't do that for every little thing. And
Can't.
life moves so much faster and smoother when you're working in alignment to what your values and your beliefs and your strengths are,
Mhm.
but I think that takes time, that takes intention, that takes slowing down, and that takes guidance, which is why it's awesome to have folks like you, Tyann,
Thank
that have this
you.
experience and this like strength and frameworks that just really help people kind of find that for
Mhm.
themselves,
Mhm.
and that can kind of guide them to that and get them into
Yeah.
that space.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right,
you.
we are going to do a fun little lightning style power round set of questions.
Uh-huh.
And if our live listening audience has any questions for Tyann, we will get to those before we wrap after the power round. Other than that, we will finish it up for the day. But this has been so much fun. So thank you again.
Thank you for having
I'm
me.
excited for us to get together. We're probably going to hang out and do some yoga here soon. So
Yes, you can come
all
to
this
my
yoga
space
talk.
up here in Coleraine, or
Yeah,
you can bring me to your space and where you like to go.
absolutely.
Both
Yeah.
both are viable options.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. All
Yeah.
right, so here we go. Let's you ready?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. What is your go-to practice for quickly centering yourself?
I feel my feet. I
Mm-hmm.
feel my seat. I am
Mm-hmm.
breathing.
I
You
love
do it
it.
anywhere. I feel my feet. I feel my seat. I am breathing.
Love it. Corporate job or coaching, which is more challenging and why?
This is a hard question. Ask me
It's not exactly
tomorrow. I
lightning.
might give you another answer, but I would say
Uh-huh.
it's
Right
actually
now.
the coaching, the entrepreneurial side, the business building side of the coaching is actually harder.
Yeah.
You've got so much more to figure out, but it's
Yeah.
actually so much more rewarding. I'm happy to put in twice the time that I was
Yeah.
putting in before.
I feel that. I
Yep.
feel that. It's a
Yep.
different kind of hard, right?
Yep.
It's a different kind of challenge.
Yep.
If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Let it be messy.
Ooh, yeah. Do you have that on a t-shirt yet? If not, we're getting you one.
No, but you know what? So up here in our center, like I'm gonna thank you. I mean,
You're
I'd
welcome.
accept any gift you give me, but actually that is something that we could put together and I
Uh-huh.
think people would resonate with it.
Let
It's
it be
part of our
messy.
business that we offer.
I love it. Let it be
Yeah.
messy. What's the most unexpected lesson yoga has taught you about leadership?
Uh how much of the answers are already within me.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right. Finish this sentence. True empowerment is.
True empowerment is letting go.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's so
True
good.
empowerment is letting go.
Oh, talk about the tingles there. That's good
Mm.
stuff. Good
Mm.
stuff. My
Yeah.
goodness. Well, I can't wait to hang out some more. Like yoga, we talked about. We've got a wellness event that's coming up. What is it, next weekend? Not this coming
Yeah,
weekend, but the weekend
the Power to Pursue
after.
Wellness Summit, which I get to go and
Yeah.
participate in. That's going to be amazing. And
Yay.
I've got yoga here every Thursday, and
Yes.
sometimes a special event class. So I
Uh-huh.
hope to see you and anyone who's interested. I
Yep.
love live engagement. I love it. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Cincinnati friends, be sure to check out those awesome, awesome events that are happening. Let me check our chat. Regarding the aforementioned spin. Oh, awesome. Elizabeth, thank you for your question. Can you tell the difference between what could be potentially a positive spin and a negative spin?
Ooh.
That's a good question.
That is such a good question. I think that a positive spin makes me tingle with excitement and
Agree.
possibility. I think a
Mm-hmm.
negative spin leaves me, to your point, Amy, dizzy,
Mm-hmm.
and it literally does not feel good in my body.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Negative spin, I think, feels like it stays in my head,
Yep.
where the positive spin, and it kind of leaves me like short of breath.
Yeah.
And the positive spin, it kind of like is more of like a whole body
Yeah.
experience. And I
Ooh.
feel more energized versus like,
Yep.
whew, like out of breath.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
how I would describe it.
Yep.
Great question, Elizabeth. I love that. There's a distinction for sure. And there can be a positive and a negative for sure.
Yep.
All right, folks. Well, we're out of time. Be sure to follow Tian on LinkedIn. We will include, and her website, lsfwellness.com. We'll include those in the chat. Live listeners, if you haven't grabbed those yet, make sure you grab those before we close out. You can also find those in the show notes once this is posted up and live. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Appreciate you.
Thank you all for being here, Amy. Thank you for having me and
Of
for such a rich
course.
conversation. I loved learning more about you. Like, this was amazing.
Ditto. Ditto. All right, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. Until then, everyone, we'll see you next week and keep asking, keep giving, and keep growing. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Produced by Heartcast Media.